Darkness engulfed the cavern as the immense beast's claws raked against stone. Kyle Karizin panted heavily, his frail body trembling from the exertion of evading the creature's relentless assaults. Around him, the remnants of his squad lay scattered, their arcane pulses scattered across the cold, damp floor. The Forbidden Expanse had lived up to its reputation, transforming their mission into a nightmare. This was supposed to be a routine reconnaissance, a search for Naxalite deposits to meet their Dean's impossible quota. Instead, Johan's greed had led them into this death trap, mere hours after they'd ventured beyond the known borders. What good are we to the Dominion if we just die out here? Kyle's thoughts raced as he clutched the jagged Naxalite crystal, its sharp edges digging into his palm. The crystal's glow was the only light in the oppressive darkness, a beacon that both saved and condemned him. Memories of his harsh life in the Iron Dominion, the cruel dismissal by peers for his weak seed, echoed through his mind. How many times had he been overlooked, deemed insignificant? A fierce roar tore him from his thoughts. The beast lunging forward, its eyes gleaming with predatory intent in the crystal's light. With a desperate cry, Kyle thrust the Naxalite shard upwards, aiming for the only valuable spot he could see, just below the beast's armored chin. As the crystal made contact, Kyle felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. His hands glowed faintly, and a surge of searing heat and light exploded forth. The air shimmered around him, reality warping as raw unleashed magic rippled outward. Colors twisted and blurred at the edges of his vision, blending into a chaotic swirl of light and shadow. It was as if the very fabric of the world momentarily vibrated, resonating with an unseen force. For a fleeting moment, Kyle's consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his frail body, enveloped by distant whispers that spoke of a forgotten ancient power. The beast's death shadow ran through the ground, its once menacing form now reduced to lifeless, twitching muscle. As life fled from the creature, the magical darkness it had conjured began to dissipate. Like thick, oily smoke, their natural gloom receded, curling away from the fallen beast and the scattered bodies of Kyle's comrades. As the oppressive darkness lifted, the true form of their nightmarish assailant was finally revealed in the dim, natural light of the cavern. The beast was massive, canine-like predator, its body sleek and powerful, roughly the size of a large bear, but with a build made for speed and agility. Its muscular frame was covered in a coat of short, midnight blue fur that seemed to absorb the light, giving it almost fluid appearance, as if shadow itself had been woven into its pelt. Along its spine, a ridge of metallic scales glistened dully, a testament to its unnatural origins. The creature's head was a terrifying blend of wolf and something decidedly more alien. Its elongated muzzle was filled with razor-sharp teeth, each as long as Kyle's finger. Instead of normal canine ears, it had horn-like protrusions that twitched and swiveled, likely allowing it to detect prey from means beyond normal hearing. Most unsettling were its eyes, not two, not four, but a grotesque array scattered across its face in an asymmetrical pattern. Some were large, others small, each a different shade of sickly, bioluminescent purple. They dotted its forehead, clustered around its snout, and even peered out from beneath its jaw, giving the impression that the beast could observe its prey from every conceivable angle. They glowed with a faint, purple bioluminescence, even in death, hinting at the beast's ability to see in multiple spectrums, and perhaps even through the magical darkness it had conjured. The wound where Kyle had struck with an Naxalite crystal was a stark contrast to the rest of its form. A jagged, star-shaped burn mark marred the underside of its jaw. The flesh around it, cracked and blackened as if struck by lightning. Wisps of acrid smoke still rose from the fatal injury, carrying the sharp, ozone-like scent of extended magical energy. This beast was clearly a product of the Expanse's twisted energies, a perfect predator evolved or mutated to hunt in the most perilous and unpredictable environments. Its size and build spoke of both power and speed, a combination that had proved deadly for Kyle's unfortunate squad mates. Kyle's senses were overwhelmed. Every nerve ending tingled as if electrified by the air itself. The overwhelming sensation was akin to standing in the epicenter of a lightning strike, feeling the energy course through him with a primal intensity. It was an alien feeling, as if his very essence resonated with the energy around him. Yet, he remained grounded, held fast by the cruel reality of his weakness. His breath came in ragged gasps, each inhale dragging the cold, stagnant air into his burning lungs. He could no longer tell where the pain ended and exhilaration began. The vast power felt almost tangible, slipping through his grasp like sand, leaving an impression he couldn't fully comprehend. His frail fingers loosened their grip, and the next light crystal, now dim and inert, tumbled from his hand. As it touched the ground, the crystal seemed to shiver for a moment before disintegrating into fine, glittering dust that scattered in the faint breeze, now dim and inert. With wide eyes, Kyle stared at the spot where the crystal had been, his vision swimming. The power that had surged through him moments ago was gone, leaving behind an echoing emptiness. Voices, no longer just distant echoes, murmured more clearly, weaving promises and secrets, but he was too overwhelmed to comprehend them. His muscles ached, and his weak knees threatened to buckle under the weight of the ordeal. In the silence that followed the beast's collapse, time seemed to stretch infinitely. Kyle's hands trembled uncontrollably, his skin slick with sweat. His heart hammered against his ribcage, each beat a relentless reminder of his precarious existence. The pulsating energy left a lingering warmth in his veins, but his mind, reeling from the intensity, struggled to piece together the reality of what had transpired. He sank to his knees, exhaustion finally taking its toll. The world narrowed to his labored breath, the soft, imperceptible hum of the residual magic still whispering at the corners of his consciousness. His immediate priority right now was survival. Kyle forced himself to his shaken feet, scanning the scene with bleary eyes for any sign of movement. The dreadful silence was punctuated by distant groans and the rustle of shifting debris. He staggered through the wreckage, his weak legs threatening to buckle with each step. Near the shattered boulder, he found Johan, collapsed on the ground. Johan's leg had been brutally severed by a beast's claws, and blood gushed out in the dark, vicious streams under the jagged terrain. His breathing was labored, erratic, and intercepted with unconscious groans of agony. Kyle dropped to his knees beside him, urgently scanning Johan's ashen face and nothing the beads of perspiration that clung to his pallid forehead. The air was thick, with a metallic scent of blood. His hands squivered slightly as he unbuckled his medicine pouch, the leatherback creasing and whispering against the tense silence. Rummaging through the pouch, Kyle's fingers brushed against the various medical supplies until he found a small vial of Vitalised gel. This gel, a highly coveted alchemical solution, was made from a rare, specially processed slime known for its near miraculous healing properties. It was thick and luminous, with a faint iridescent glow that hinted at its potent efficiency. Hastily, Kyle unscrewed the vial and began to apply the gel directly on the devastating wound. As soon as the gel touched Johan's torn flesh, it began to froth and spread, forming an elastic slimy layer over the laceration. The viscous substance seemed to pulse with life, sealing the injury with a film that the stasis-inducing properties of a Vitalist gel activated almost immediately, stemming the blood flow and stabilizing Johan's vital signs. "Just hold on, Johan," Kyle whispered, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. He could see the color slowly draining from Johan's face, but the gel was working. This emergency measure would grant them the precious time needed to transport Johan to a healer. Kyle took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. Johan's eyes remained closed, his face a mask of pain even in unconsciousness. He quickly checked to ensure the Vitalist gel was continuing to effectively seal the wound. Satisfied, Kyle turned his attention to the eerie silence around them, his ears straining for any sounds that might indicate other survivors. It was then that he heard it, a faint, anguished cry emerging from behind another pile of rubble. The sound pierced through the dismal stillness, stirring something deep within him. Despite the overwhelming exhaustion threatening to engulf him, Kyle's determination surged anew. He cast one last glance at Johan's still form before moving swiftly toward the source of the cry. The terrain was treacherous, littered with debris and the scars of a ferocious conflict that had taken place. Each step felt like an eternity, the painted wails fueling his urgency. Though his muscles screamed in protest, he pressed forward, driven by a single, unyielding purpose: to save as many as he could. He hurried over, heart pounding in his chest, clawing aside the debris with trembling hands. He uncovered Lyera, conscious but with a dazed look in her eyes. A large bruise marred her forehead, signifying the high chances of concussion. "Lyera, are you okay?" Kyle asked, concern evident in his voice. Lyera shook her head gently, trying to shake off the cobwebs from her mind, but her slightly unfocused eyes indicate how futile this attempt was. She tried to speak, but her words came out slurred and confused.
"What happened? What?"
she mumbled, her gaze flickering around the chaotic scene. Kyle realized she needed immediate attention. "Stay with me, Lyera," he urged, gently guiding her to sit down. "You have a concussion. Take deep breaths and focus on my voice." Lyera's breathing was unsteady, her eyes unfocused. Kyle retrieved a small pouch from Johan's satchel, finding a vial of maroon, luminescent liquid wavering inside the vessel. It was an arcanite-induced oil, known for its ability to help focusing during long and tedious magical rituals. "This will help," he said, applying a few drops to her temples and massaging gently. The oil's aroma of calming lavender and invigorating mint filled the air. "Breathe deeply," he instructed. "In and out. We need to make sure you're stable enough to help with Johan." Lyera followed his instructions, taking slow, deep breaths. As the oil took effect, a bit of clarity returned to her eyes. Kyle continued. "Look at me. Focus on my eyes. We need to make sure you don't have a severe concussion." Gradually, her breathing steadied, and her gaze became more confused.
"Thanks,"
she muttered, a hint of reluctant respect creeping into her voice.
"I think I can help now."
Kyle nodded, relieved. "Good. We need to move Johan carefully. The monster tore off his leg. I've applied Vitalis, but we need to move him to a safer place." Together, they carefully dragged Johan to a small alcove in the cavern wall, partially hidden by a jutting rock formation. The natural recess provided some shelter and concealment from any potential threats. Not that another attack was highly likely. The place was definitely the beast lair, and the creature must have scared all other predators away, weighed them, which seemed more plausible, given the sheer amount of various bones scattered around, including ones that resembled human remains too closely to be just a coincidence. The alcove's rough walls glimmered faintly with patches of bioluminescent moss, casting a soft, eerie glow over Johan's unconscious form. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best protection they could offer, giving the limited options in the cavernous environment. As two cadets walked together, an uneasy silence settled between them, punctuated by Johan's labored breaths. Liera, still a bit groggy but more coherent, finally spoke.
How? How did you survive that?
Her voice was weak and filled with disbelief.
How on Xyphara did you manage to kill that beast?
Kyle shook his head, confusion clouding his own thoughts. I don't know. Got lucky, I suppose.
Lucky, huh?
Liera's eyes narrowed, a mix of suspicion and bewilderment crossing her face. She fell silent, her gaze flicking between Kyle and the fallen beast. Her expression spoke volumes, clearly struggling to reconcile his weak reputation with the scene before her. The first signs of dusk began to filter from the cavern's entrance, casting long shadows across the rocky floor. Kyle and Liera sat in uneasy silence, their eyes constantly darting between Johan's unconscious form and the aftermath of their harrowing ordeal. The bodies of fallen comrades and the massive mutated beast that had nearly ended their lives. They had tried to give their deceased friends a proper burial, but the cavern floor proved too unyielding for their bare hands. Instead, they had resorted to covering the bodies with piles of stones, makeshift cranes that stood as silent monuments to lives cut short. The physical exertion had been a welcome distraction, but now, in the quiet aftermath, the weight of their loss pressed heavily upon them. Unable to stand this uneasy atmosphere even a second longer, Kyle had left Liera to watch over still unconscious Johan, determined to find a way out of this labyrinth nightmare. But with each turn, each branching path, he felt more lost than ever. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting back on themselves in ways that defied logic. The air was thick with moisture and the musty scent of decay. As he moved, his footsteps distributed swarms of strange, insect-like creatures that scuttled across the walls and ceiling. They were unlike anything he had seen before, some with too many legs, others with translucent bodies that pulsed with an inner light. They feasted on the glowing moss, their alien mandibles clicking in the silence. Kyle's breath came in ragged gasps, his weak constitution rebelling against the prolonged exertion. He leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he could have sworn the corridor had changed, the patterns of moss subtly different. A chill ran down his spine as a disturbing thought occurred to him. What if the cavern itself was alive, shifting and changing to keep them trapped? He shook his head, trying to disclose the paranoid notion. But in Forbidden Expanse, he couldn't be sure of anything anymore. With a deep breath, Kyle pushed himself off the wall and continued his search. He had to find a way out, for Liera, for Johan, and for himself. But as he ventured deeper into the twisting passages, the glowing moss seeming to mock his efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling that the cavern had no intention of letting them leave. He ventured for around an hour, but at last he surrendered and dropped his futile efforts, suspecting that the escape was not possible for them without Johan. Surprisingly, just after mere minutes he was able to safely return back to the remains of his grip, or perhaps the cavern let him do so. Only when he saw familiar faces did he understand how foolish he had been to attempt to find the exit on his own. At any moment, the corridors might have changed, and he'd have been stuck, cut off from his grip. This realization shook him hard, sending a cold shiver down his spine. His heart raced as he imagined himself lost in the endless, shifting maze, alone, with the alien insects and mocking glow of the moss. The thought of Liera and Johan waiting for him, perhaps searching fruitlessly, made his stomach churn with guilt and fear. Kyle's hands trembled slightly as the full weight of his reckless decision hit him. Well, at least they were safe in this labyrinth. He sincerely hoped they were. Their only hope was that this terrain was as hard to pass for predators as it was for them. As the daylight seeping from the numerous cracks in the cavern ceiling faded, it was replaced by the ethereal glow of the expanse's natural flora. The luminescent moss cast an eerie, shifting light across the rocky floor. Finally, the night settled in. Kyle combined the solid fuel from their survival kits and the moss that was in abundance in the cave to make a small bonfire. The flames danced with unusual colors as the moss burned, casting flickering shadows across the cavern walls. They ate the mega dinner of nutritious bars in silence, while Lear attended to Johan, carefully examining the area where the vital gel had been applied. She noticed with a mixture of relief and amazement that his leg began to slowly regenerate. Kyle stared into the strangely hued fire, his mind racing with plans to get everyone to safety. Despite his inner turmoil and uncertainty, Kyle spoke up, his voice steadier than he felt. "We need to get ready to move," he said, trying to reassure Lyra. "Once Johan regains his consciousness, we'll need to leave. Quickly. This isn't over, but together, we still have a chance."